could climb as high as 1,400 naira per litre. So there's a couple of twists to this, but let's come back to the CBN's. This is CBN's macroeconomic outlook for 2026, by the way. Their assumption is $55 per barrel for crude.
Okay, which is low.
Which is very, very conservative and actually but more accurate.
Yes, which is good.
The federal government's budget is $65 per barrel. Look at the disparity.
The same government.
The same government.
Yeah. Which the CBN is meant to feed into that budget. Meaning that if you're preparing a budget, every department submits, then you harmonize. So if the CBN is saying $55 per barrel, where is the government getting 65 from? Because
so where's the synergy between the fiscal and monetary policy?
Yeah, because if at the end of the day a budget is presented, it is assumed that the executive sat down, everybody, NNPC is here, CBN is here, Agric is here, Power and all that, and they are arguing over it, and they are brainstorming over it for days. If this is the assumption, then coming out of that meeting shouldn't be two different numbers, because that's what we're experiencing now. So 55, like you said, is a little bit more realistic and not overly optimistic, while 65 is a whole lot optimistic, because with the way things are going globally, I think the price of crude is still going to go down. So if you're building almost 60% of your budgets, okay, on revenue, which is majorly from oil, and there's already a 10 to 15%, disparity, then that's a whole lot.
I mean, and not one thing that CBN also said here, that even with inflation easing, petrol price may go up. So sometimes I wonder if the CBN believes in the inflation easing that the NBS, submits.
Because it's easy, it's going to go down.
Exactly. So if inflation is easing,
price of
CBN is saying
going down.
Price of petrol is going to go up.
Yes.
CBN is saying we cannot reduce interest rates, even though inflation is easing. It's a bit
it's like an oxymoron, yeah. It's just like all the ACs here are on, and we're saying, no, the heat is going to continue going up. The temperature of this room is going to continue going on. That's the way it sounds sometimes. We talked about this last year when we say that the government brings out a certain report, and that report is meant to actually inform, for example, reduction in interest rates. But when you see the NPR, the next thing we see is a hike again.
Yes.
So there is a divorce between the data that we are being told and the action being taken that are meant to be based on that data. So the question is why? Because if the CBN is saying crude oil is going down on one side, and on the other side we are still saying that inflation is easing up, I think the only logical thing to do is to cut back interest rates.
And then you're not cutting down interest rate.
So are you saying the data is a lie?
So exactly. So does the CBN believe the data? That's my question now. So does CBN believe this data when we talk about inflation easing? Does the CBN believe the data when we say we are averaging 1.5 million barrels per day? Does CBN believe the data that is being churned out by the Bureau of Statistics, the National Bureau of Statistics? Because you're not easing interest rate, and you're telling us now that fuel prices are still going to go up. That's a huge dichotomy going on, and they need to explain that.
We need to ask CBN. You need to ask
CBN. They need to let us know what is going on. But let's talk about the fuel price for a minute. What this also means is that for the average Nigerian, you're going to spend 950 naira to buy a liter of fuel. And remember that with the taxes, you're supposed to also pay some tax on every liter of fuel that you buy. So at the end of the day, how is the average Nigerian supposed to survive? Because transportation, it's also another huge chunk
to the end of the
that
day?
That takes most of an average Nigerian's income. So fuel is 950. That's basically about 1,000.
Yeah, I think the implementation of that 10% is going to start this year, right?
Yes, but I mean the CBN is saying that the only reason why we're ever getting 950 is because we have Dangote.
But Dangote is selling cheaper.
So that's the thing. So there are people who are affiliated with him, like all of these other consortiums. They sell a little lower. So, but the average size is 950. That's just about 1,000 naira per liter.
There's something that the government has been doing for a long while now, generally, not this dispensation only. And what I see is the government keeps pushing its populace to a level of independence that might not be the best. This is what I mean. I said on this show before that while we were in Lagos, grew up in Lagos Festac, 1989 was the last time government water rushed in the house. I remember perfectly. Now, when I got to Abuja, at a point in time in Kubwa, government water used to rush. I don't know about now. They might still rush or not, because I know there's water board in Kubwa. What did this push people to do? Gradually, people started graduating from wells to boreholes. So people started becoming independent in water. That is why there's a cultural shock when you travel out and you find out that everything is from the government. You cannot dig your own borehole. You cannot carry cylinder and go and buy gas. You're like, what's going on here? I'm used to being my own government. I don't want you. So that's the first level. The second level was power, which outdates water. From the 70s, 80s, the power had been epileptic. So people gradually started leaning more on generators. Now, somebody is building a house, is already thinking of alternative power supply, which now is solar, is the reigning thing, alternative water supply. And it will get to a stage that people will be so used to providing everything for themselves that they start questioning the purpose of governance. It's a gradual thing. It might take 2-3 decades more, but that's the direction.
Because at the end of the day now, you're doing all of this for yourself, but the government is saying, come and pay more taxes. And
yeah.
Why am I paying more taxes?
See,
for what?
Okay, for example, now, I'm also trying to see how I can go into my solar stuff, because at the end of the day, you're saying you're on band A, and band A is turning everywhere to darkness. You come into our estate at night, nobody wants to put on any lights. No security light, which is going to have adverse effect. Nobody can put on their heaters. Nobody can iron clothes.
It's too expensive.
Because it's too expensive. If you are running because they were saying that there's no balance between what
the Minister of Power is saying, can everybody else, because now we have a lot of industries and companies and hospitals that are now moving on to alternative power, and they're saying, please come back. And what are we coming back to?
Now China is producing more EVs, electric vehicles, that they can buy. So this year they are going to flood the whole world with EVs, and their electric vehicles are as low as $5,000, $7,000. And if you are able to get some documents from government, you can bring it in for no custom duty. So gradually people will get to a point where they will just be living their life in isolation. They don't want anything.
I think you're giving government ideas with EVs. Please, let's not go there. Okay. All right, so away with the fuel price projection by the CBN, let's look at this new trend of the recently implemented tax law. You know that this Nigerian newly gazetted tax law that took effect from January 1 already drawing scrutiny and a lot of controversies as well. Now you have KPMG, one of the big four, warning that errors, gaps, and inconsistencies in the Act could create compliance uncertainty for businesses, non-residents, and even communities, potentially undermining the reform's stated goals of fairness and efficiency. Now, that critique quickly sparked a response from the Presidential Tax Reform Team, prompting KPMG to clarify that its analysis was not an attack on government policy, but a technical review meant to support implementation, highlighting a deeper issue now at the heart of Nigeria's tax debate: how to balance urgent revenue reforms with legal clarity, trust, and smooth execution. So, when I first saw the KPMG report, I don't know if you read it, I read through it, and they took the time. What was interesting with that KPMG analysis was that they were not even necessarily talking about the fact that we have two different gazetted, tax laws. They just focused on what the government put out and say, well, from this, there are a lot of inconsistencies, there are gaps, and you need to be able to bridge those gaps, and you need to clarify these inconsistencies. But what now happened is that when because KPMG just stood with the text, like this is what you said here. They talked about, what are you looking at? Foreigners with buying things in dollars, and you're saying that you have to convert this naira. They talked about a lot of other things like that. And you see the response from the tax committee. It is combative, it is aggressive, it is like you don't have a right to critique this. And you're wondering, if you are really working for the people, why can't people analyze that you want people to pay these taxes? And people are saying that, well, these are the inconsistencies we find with its taxes. Why is it so hard, for governments to just take these critiques, and say, okay, well, If it's clarity, we can provide a clarity. But you come back combative, aggressive, just wanting to fight and all of that. And it just feels like if KPMG can't understand your tax laws, and a lot of analysts can't understand your tax laws, how are you the only person that understands the tax laws that you want an entire country to abide by?
Their own tax education was learned from somewhere different, maybe not from other schools that we went to. When a video game is being developed, Faith, because I play games sometimes, when a particular game is developed, before it is put into the market, it is sent out to players. They will play it from beginning to the end and give their opinion. That, oh, this should have been this is wrong, oh, this is good. They will give their opinion. Just like movies too. You see Rotten Tomatoes and all that, the critics, they send it there so that people can get an honest feedback. Now, once you get
like a test run phase.
Yeah, it's a sample. They've not released it yet. You have some albums where although their own is a little bit lesser, music album where they say they are doing what's it called?
Like a listening party.
Now something like that. Now, but we have a government that is bringing out something and doesn't want any stakeholder, to even
have a say.
Because it's just a say at the end of the day. And the truth is this: when they have their say, and you call them up, and if possible, even put them on a TV show, and you guys discuss it, and you give them the answers, it increases our own confidence. So the way they responded to KPMG, even though I have my own issues with KPMG, they are just waking up now, but they are welcome. But at the end of the day, I feel that criticism, constructive ones, should be welcomed and further helps the government to explain themselves. And at the end of the day, we all get a clearer picture. Because if you ask an average Nigerian about the tax, they don't know. They just tell you that government want to remove 25% from my account. They don't have, and the education being done is not enough. Because instead of pushing social media influencers, they are not tax law experts. Get the experts, get them on national orientation, and let them educate everybody in all manner of languages in Nigeria. And hear the feedback. And like I said, before even implementing this, you should have gone through this phase. Let people be able to have a feedback. The government should not be one way.
Well, to be fair to the Presidential Tax Committee, they actually did a lot of town halls and all of that. But like this rigorous debate, especially considering the fact that what was signed and passed by National Assembly is not what is being gazetted, by the Finance Ministry. This rigorous debate that should happen between experts and stakeholders wasn't really put forward. It was just a lot of town halls to explain to people, and it doesn't seem like that actually did the trick, because now what we're seeing, we have a lot of more enforcement policies of, they can't just come and pick you up, they can't just deduct your money from your bank account.
Without court
orders, and you expect people to be okay with this, and if they ask questions, you're like, you're making this political, you hate the government, that's why you're doing this. But it's their money. Don't they have a right to ask you questions about what you want to do?
Someone said, government did not give me work, they want to take for me. I don't know, that's how a country works. The reason why you're saying this is because maybe you have not seen the dividends. And everybody say, okay, wait for the dividend. But the question also is, for the little that have been entrusted to the government for decades,
what have they done?
What have they done?
Exactly.
During the Eltai season, there was a whole lot of traffic going down south, which basically is just that the roads are bad. So if the major roads that connects Abuja to the southwest, to the southeast are bad, then where does all the infrastructure money go to? Power is epileptic, but better. Power has been better. I won't lie, it has been better, but I don't like the mandate to.
But you do understand that we have less than 15 million Nigerians on the grid, and that's looking at a country of about 200.
And it's going to go lower.
Yes, so you have less than that, on the grid, and that's talking about not people doing solar or whatever, just regular Nigerians. That means that you've not captured the majority of Nigerians under the grid. There are places in Nigeria where they do not have power.
A lot of places.
So they're not even connected to the grid at all. So when you're telling people has gotten better, maybe at urban cities.
Urban cities. Before you arrest me.
Anyway, let's move on that very quickly, and as we wrap up, let's talk about what's going on in the market. Naira is off to a steady start in 2026, showing modest but encouraging gains against the US dollar. By the end of last week, it strengthened to about 1,424 Naira, supported by slightly higher foreign reserves, improved liquidity, and optimism from the CBN about oil earnings. That's where inflows and even domestic refining. And what this tells us is that pressures in the FX market are easing, and with continued policy consistency, policies, the Naira could remain more stable, helping curb imported inflation and boosting investor confidence. So now, what the Naira is showing these early signs of stability, what policies or reforms do you think are most critical to maintain this trajectory and prevent a return to volatility, and most especially help us attain the 1,400 mark, because we're still not there yet?
Well, if I was to borrow from Daniel Watts, why are we fixated on a lower exchange rate? Is that the goal?
Because our budget is always fixated on lower exchange rate.
Is that the goal? You know, FDIs, first of all, because at the end of the day, the balancing is always based on what is coming in and what's going out. You know, how much are we making in dollars? How much are we spending in dollars? This, as simple as it is what puts pressure on the exchange rate. If we are importing much more than what we export,
yes,
at the end of the day, we are going to have pressure on the Naira. The dollar is going to have more value against the Naira. So what I feel the government should, first of all, focus on is FDIs, bring in much more investments, not FPIs. FPIs are good, we need more of them, but we need things that will stay for a longer period of time. These are the things that will stabilize our exchange rate. Also, policies will go a long way. And also, CBN should keep doing what they are doing, because I know that they also intervene from time to time to make sure that this is balanced. So, so far, I would say that for the past 4 or 5 months, I've been, kind of impressed, at least for the fact that it has been a little bit stable, because that stability for me is always more crucial than whatever the figure is, because you can plan with a certain amount that, it's always going to be 1.4. Then people can bring in funds, knowing that the next 6, 7 months, 1 year, when they want to pull out their funds, they will not have exchange rate issues. So FDIs, FPIs, government policies, and a whole lot of other stuff. But these three things, if can be managed properly, I think we to keep the exchange rate stable for a longer period.
For that period, and maybe we'll get to 1,004. Anyway, thank you so much, Mr. Abiola, for coming on the show. That wraps up today's Business Lens. Clearly, while there are encouraging signs in currency and market stability, the real challenge lies in effective policy implementation and fiscal planning to support growth and protect households. Anyway, we'll do this again on Thursday at 11 a.m. But make sure to follow us across all our social media platforms for more business updates and insights. I'm Faith Alpha Joseph. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to stay with Rapid TV, of course. The Rapid TV news comes up at the top of the hour. Good morning.